Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Daniel, and today in this video we'll be covering my round 4 game in the Midwest House Championships. At this point I am 1.5 for 3 for my score, so I'm on 50%. I'm playing the white pieces, and let's see what I can do in round 4. So here, d4. We go into another Queen's Gambit decline. If you saw the video for my round 2 recap, we also went into a Queen's Gambit decline. This time my opponent plays with the hanging pawns with the C pawn and the D pawn. And here, quite early on actually, in fact, here my position was getting a bit cramped, so I had to play bishop e2 to prevent a move like d4. Surprisingly, my opponent still went for d4. I thought after bishop e2, a potential idea was maybe to play something like knight into e4. The idea was after knight takes on e4, pawn takes on e4, if I play something like queen captures on d8, then after bishop captures on d8, bishop captures on d8, rook captures on d8, rook captures d8, captures on d8, and knight captures on d8. Pretty much here, this pawn is attacked, and my knight is also attacked at the same time. So that means I would probably have to lose this pawn, and then this bishop's attacked, and then there is this passed c pawn. However, here after pawn takes, I'd seen there was this move queen to c3. The computer actually suggests queen c2 as better. I guess the idea is because you're attacking this pawn technically and attacking the queen. I thought that after knight b4 my position was a bit annoying, but I forgot that this pawn was completely hanging. But besides from the point, anyways, I saw like queen c3 pretty much, which attacks the queen. And then after the queen goes to like c7, let's say, then bishop captures on e7, knight captures on e7. Then I can put my knight on g5, attack the bishop, attack this pawn, and this position looks decently pleasant for white. However, my opponent here goes forwards with h6 firstly, and then bishop h4, and then here plays the move d4, which I found to be a little bit strange because I saw that I did have knight b, so pretty much the idea is that, let's say we trade everything. The idea is that after we trade everything, you have the move rook captures on b2, which black pretty much gets very active on the 7th rank. However, I had seen that there was this move after my opponent here plays knight takes. After knight takes, my original plan was that after something like, let's say, actually pawn takes, we'll say, knight b5. The idea is that now I'm attacking this pawn 4 times. You can't actually defend it directly. Even if you do, I can still take it because I'm attacking it 4 times and you only have 2 defenders right now. This knight is supported by this bishop over here. There is no d3 trick to try to dislodge the bishop because I can simply play bishop captures on d3. So I didn't really understand when my opponent pushed the move d4. However, here knight takes on d4, knight takes, queen takes. And here I thought after knight b5 my position looked decently playable. I'm actually attacking a7 at the same time, and this all around just looks pretty good for white. Here my opponent does find bishop e7, which I'm pretty sure is the best move in the position. Bishop e7 pretty much counterattacks my knight, so I can't play rook takes on d4. Because then there's bishop captures on b5, at which point I would be losing. And if I play knight takes, then there is still rook takes on b2. However, with low time, this is still the variation I went for anyway, and here I play bishop f3 just to consolidate my position. Here my opponent goes forwards with g5, I put my bishop on g3, makes sense. Here g4 was played, and I played bishop c6. And here we trade, bishop takes, knight takes, and at this point, keep in mind, I have about 5 minutes left on my clock. Not that much time to process everything that is happening in this position. But just to generally break down the position. Firstly, my threat is I'm attacking the bishop. A secondary threat I have is playing the move bishop to e5, forking the rook as well as the knight, and maybe being able to win a piece. However, here my opponent does have the move bishop to c5. The idea is that now if I play bishop to e5, there is something like rook captures on f2, defending this knight. This bishop supports this rook, and then there are like discover check ideas if I don't move my king. So I can't move my bishop pretty much, has to keep a guard over f2. So here I play knight e5, another good move. The idea is that let's say you play something random like h5, then here I have the move knight to d3, forking the knight and forking the bishop and the rook. If you move the rook to b5, let's say, defending, then I can simply capture, and then here I have bishop d6, forking the 2 rooks and being able to win in exchange. So here my opponent actually saw this threat, so instead play rook to e2, and this sets up another threat for my opponent. The idea is, let's say I play like a move like a4, then here I have the splendid move bishop captures on f2. The idea is if after bishop captures on f2, there is rook captures on e5. Although I guess now looking at it, I do have bishop captures on a7, which makes this around equal. And in fact, practically, it's probably easier for white to play because white does have this outside pass pawn. But with low time, I didn't really see that much. Instead, I actually played king f1, which is actually, the computer actually considers this to be better anyway. So that's okay. Here, rook e4. Rook a to c1. There is no bishop captures on f2 because I simply have king captures on f2. So here, and then here bishop b6 was played, and here I gladly played rook c4. Idea is, once we trade, which we did in the game, I'm attacking this bishop, so you can't like attack this knight again, because I can simply capture, and I have the bishop for the knight, and this should be a bit more playable for white, because it's more of an open position. So here, bishop c5, here I put my knight into e5. My idea is to maybe play knight d7 to try to like simplify the position even more, but I don't even know what my plan was at this point. So here, just a bit more shuffling. And here my opponent started creating some ideas. Here, rook to d8 was played. And here there is only one move in the position that keeps it around equal, which is the move knight b2. The idea here is that my opponent's attacking this knight, but also x-ray sort of attacking my rook here. What I mean by that is, let's say I play something like knight f4. Then here my opponent has the move knight f3 check. The idea is that you're attacking my rook here. I can't move my rook because I'm in check by the knight. So after takes, rook captures on d1, king here, and this is simply losing for white because I am down in exchange. So the reason why knight b2 actually makes it equal is because there is no knight f3, because now I can simply capture. And if you capture here, then you'll see I'm simply up a piece because my knight actually defends the rook on d1. So here, bishop b4, the idea is to try to sneak into a3 to attack this knight, and then this knight f3 idea is renewed. However, here I found the move bishop to f4. The idea here is that there's still no knight f3, my knight's still defending, and if you play something like bishop c3, which my opponent played, then I can simply snap off a pawn on h6, and this makes it easier for me to get some practical chances because I'm up a pawn now. This is actually what we went into, and then after bishop captures on b2, I played rook captures on d2, and here after we traded down, you'll see I'm simply up a pawn in a bishop's endgame, and at this point, after f5, bishop e6, bishop e3, and a6, we've now reached the time control, and now it's just a matter of time to see if I can slowly grind down this position into a win. So here h3, and here I simply push h4. I didn't push h4 right away, mainly because I didn't like something after en passant. Then I have to keep eyes on this pawn, so I wanted to go for like sort of h3 first and then h4. Obviously, if you do take, then oh well, I mean, I can still play that position. I have a pass pawn, so it's okay. But after king f7, h4. Here I slide my king over, I play g3. So now I have this really nice structure here. This pawn on h4 is passed, so this king can't wander off into a random direction, because then this pawn should be able to push through. So pretty much I've locked in this king for now, and then now I can slowly move my king in and try to make some progress. a5 I think is a pivotal blunder. It was already worse for black because I have this extra pawn, but now this pawn on a5 is now stuck on a dark square. So I play a4 to lock it on a dark square, and now I can even attack it in the future with this bishop. So here I slowly move my king in, and as you can see, this king being locked in is really not good for my opponent. It's quite the pain. It's actually quite annoying because I have like all the time in the world to improve my king's position and decide on a plan, while my opponent just has to like sort of sit and wait with their own bishop. So as you see, I bring my king in, and here my opponent plays f4. f4, the idea is that if I play bishop captures on f4, then after bishop captures on f2, this is probably like a draw at this point because these pawns are blockaded by this king. There's no way I'm going to be able to win this pawn without having to give away one of these two pawns, without giving away the g3 pawn, at which point this g4 pawn would become passed, and this is just a complete draw. So here I play g captures on f4, king captures on h4 was played, and here I play f5. And you can see that black's king is kind of stuck in a box. These three squares are all taken by the bishop and the pawn, and pretty much black's only plan I can really see here is trying to win this f2 pawn, but black is just too slow. King h3, f6, king g2, f7, bishop takes. I mean, at this point I can even get a queen, but if I want to, I can just do this, and this pawn is going to get stopped. I can march over, win this pawn, and then make this pawn into a queen. So after king takes, I play f5, and then here my opponent plays bishop b4. The idea is to stop my pawn from being able to promote on the f8 square, And now black might have enough time to play g3, trade off these pawns, and then try to come over here and win this a4 pawn, or alternatively try to bring their king into a blockading position, because something that's not good for me is I have a dark square bishop, and the corner of this rook pawn is a light square. So pretty much I have to make sure that if the f2 and g3 pawn get traded, then I have to make sure that I'm able to blockade my opponent's king from being able to step to basically the a file in this case, even if my opponent doesn't have a bishop or this pawn, because this like wrong colored rook pawn, even with a dark squared bishop, because of the wrong colored promotion square, it doesn't matter, it would be a draw. So here, king e6 I played. I calculate after g3, f takes, king takes. I have simply like bishop to a6 here. If you play king f3, then I can play f6. If you play king e4, then here I can simply play f7. If you play king to d4, then here I can play f8 equals queen. Actually, sorry, that's actually a blunder because that would be a draw. But here I can simply play, I believe I calculated something like, so basically my opponent's idea is to sneak around. But here I can play something like bishop f4. You play king to c4, I play bishop to d6, and I cut you off on this diagonal. Once we trade, if you go here, then I can simply queen. And then here I can come back and just blockade a1, and I will be completely winning. So that's what I calculated, so I knew I was still winning. So here my opponent plays king h5, and here they just shuffle back and forth, which actually makes my job a lot easier, because they're sort of just waiting around, and they're not really doing much. f6 I played. Here king h3, my opponent tries to sneak around and play g3. King to e8. Here I could have decided between king e8 or king g8 to help support this f7, f8. I decided king e8 because, I mean, at least this king is now closer to winning this pawn if necessary, whereas on g8 it needs to take 2 extra moves. So king e8 is just a bit more convenient. King to g2. Here I play f7. Here I'm not worried about g3 because after takes, takes, and queen, bishop captures, king king f3, bishop here, bishop takes pawn, king to d5. Actually, I guess this is actually technically a draw. So going back, here after king captures on f8 and king f3, the winning variation is actually to play bishop to d2 instead. Because after king e4, then here I can simply march my king over, king d7. If you move your king here, then here I have king c6. And here, after king b3, then I have the very pivotal move king to b5. And this king is pretty much boxed in. And there's opposition here, so the king isn't able to go onto the a8 square. So that's quite the crucial detail you have to be able to spot. However, in the game, here after f7, my opponent plays king f3. Now g3 is actually a legitimate threat, because if I take, then I can lose the bishop and probably end up in a draw. So here I play bishop g6, bishop b6. And here after king e2, I find a very fancy move. Bishop captures on a5. The idea is like this is a deflection tactic. If you take, then I can get a queen. And this is easily winning bishop e6. Then I can simply come back and win this pawn. Alternatively, after bishop takes on a5, bishop to c5. Here, a very simple win is to simply play f8 equals queen. And then here, if you take, and then if you play king d3, then I can simply move and protect this pawn. And then I can simply come back and collect this pawn, because the black king has to run over to collect the a4 pawn, or I can even protect it with like something like a5, and I should be completely winning. And if you take here, then I simply have bishop to b6 check. You play king e2, I play a5, king to d3, a6, king to c4, a7, king to b6, king to b5. Here I can even play something like bishop g1. You're still too slow. I can get a queen, and I can pick up this pawn. However, here I play bishop e6, which makes my life a bit more complicated, because bishop takes, f8 equals queen, and bishop captures on f2. This pawn is only 3 squares away from promotion, so I have to be really careful. And also at this point, I should mention I have really low time. However, I quickly figure out the schematic I want to help to defend this position is to put my queen onto the g2 square without having my opponent's king being able to contest this square. The reason why you'll see shortly, pretty much after queen f5, my idea is to either play queen to h3 or somehow sneak through with queen e4 and come to g2. G3, queen to h3, because my idea is, let's say black plays a random move. After queen g2, this structure is never getting through. my queen here is perfectly blockading black's pieces, and I'm simply able to play a5, a6, a7, a8, supported by my king, and this is completely winning because at some point my opponent has to sacrifice the bishop for the pawn, and then this pawn is very easily blockaded and I can bring my king back to win it. However here, king f3, and here I play a5. My idea is that g2 isn't possible because the queen pins this pawn. So here my opponent has to play bishop g1 to open up the f2 square. However, here I simply play queen not queen f1, but here I simply play a6. The idea is if you play king f2, you're blocking your own bishop, so I simply have a7 here. You can push g2, but I simply can get another queen, and this pawn is going to get picked off. So here, instead my opponent has to play bishop e3, at which point now I play queen f1 check, and I get the schematic I want. After king g4, here I simply play king to d7. I bring my king closer so that I'm able to support this pawn for being able to promote. Bishop f2, and here I play queen g2, and now I get the schematic I want. This queen perfectly blockades this pawn, doesn't allow it to move forward. There's no way for the king to help this pawn push forwards because pretty much the king can't be beside the queen because the queen controls all of these squares. This bishop doesn't do anything besides from protect this pawn and I guess protect a7 for now, but when my king walks over I can simply promote it. And here, after king f4, I simply slide my king over, and my opponent gives up the bishop for the pawn. And here I simply bring my king back, put the king in opposition, and then win the pawn. And now this is just a simple queen checkmate. I bring my king in, and slowly, after queen to b7 and 92 moves, I win this game with the very classic queen checkmate, after complicating my position a little bit, but making it into kind of, in a sense, kind of like a study-like position, even though every single move was winning, but still quite a little bit difficult to spot. So now that moves my score to 2.5 out of 4. Honestly speaking, reflecting back on it, quite a way to bounce back from my round 1 loss. Doing very well in the tournament at this point, 2.5 out of 4. And actually, I calculated my performance rating after this game. It was 1996, and I needed, and basically, firstly, I want to get Candidate Master, and I need Candidate Master norms. Candidate Master norms, you need 2000 performance rating to get 1 Candidate Master norm. You need 5 of those. So I was at 1996, and I knew in order to get a Candidate Master norm, I would have to win my round 5 game. So I'll leave you guys on a bit of a cliffhanger. So if you want to see if I got my Candidate Master norm or not, feel free to tune into my round 5 recap, and you'll be able to see whether or not I was able to get there. See you there.